I am so excited to introduce my guest today, Jonathan Otto. We have been friends and colleagues for quite a few years. I've been featured in quite a few of his documentaries. He is a multi-award winning filmmaker, investigative medical journalist, and serial entrepreneur, reaching millions with his life-saving solutions to cancer, autoimmune disease, dementia, and vaccine injuries through his company, Health Secret. He produced the hit series, The Truth About Cancer. You may have watched that. Created Cancer Secrets, Autoimmune Secrets, and cancer supplements with his well of life and he continues to transform hundreds of thousands of lives. His humanitarian work is focused on famine relief and long-term sustainability in sub-Saharan Africa. Welcome, Jonathan, to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Jill. I appreciate it. It's so lovely to be with you.
Yeah, I'm so excited because we've known each other for a long time, and we just happened to meet at a conference and have some chats about the work you're doing, the work I'm doing, and I was so excited about the information that you're going to talk to us about today that I literally was like, "Hey, let's do this podcast. Let's make it happen." And we both, spur of the moment, a few hours ago, literally scheduled this interview, and I'm super excited to have you here to talk about red light therapy.
Right on. Yeah, absolutely. This is so important. And for me, if one thing I did with my life was to help get more people to know about this for the kinds of situations that people are in today, where a lot of people are losing their livelihoods and their life. Does this really work? Is it a regenerative therapy? And the answer is yes. And you're about to see some data that perhaps you and I'm sure the majority of your audience have not seen this information. It's so important. And please do look into what I'm saying. I'm going to reference everything I'm saying. Everything I'm saying, you can go and find the references for by just searching the keywords of the words that I'm saying. You'll find that everything I'm saying is 100% fact. And then you can, share that with others. People need to know.
Yeah, I love it. And I love, let's go back before we jump into the topic of the day, the red lights. I want to know your history because you clearly have a passion for bringing truth, bringing relevant information to audiences. And like I said, I've known you for probably a decade, been involved in your documentaries, and I've really always respected the integrity you bring to your work. Tell us a little bit about, though, what's your background? How did you get into this work?
Thanks, Jill. Well, my interests had been actually since a young child had been in humanitarian work because I started to realize that people suffer. It was through the TV because there was commercials, and in this case, it was a World Vision commercial, and yeah, that was about 7 years old. I remember seeing that, and it had such an impact on me, and I was crying and asked my mom, "Can we sponsor a child?" She said, "Well, if you want to do that, you have to learn how to make money." And hence the connection between being an entrepreneur and solving problems. And so I delivered newspapers. We sponsored two children for the next 15 years. But then I went on to like work for these groups, and then I wanted to get degrees that would back that. So I got a double major in journalism and media production, started traveling through sub-Saharan Africa and working on projects related to famine relief and even human trafficking, and then did a diploma later in education. My interests there were all in within getting people up to speed on what was going on, what was the root cause of what was happening when it came to suffering. So it was interesting that there was this beautiful transition, which I'm still doing the humanitarian work, but a transition into the human health work, which was connected because what I noticed that often, almost always, injustice was thriving because of a lack of knowledge, and the knowledge was the key to set people free. And so I used my skills in journalism, went deep into the medical arena, and then was discovering lots of things that even the medical doctors I was connecting with weren't familiar with. And so, fast forward, it got to the point where a lot of leading medical facilities asked me to come and do trainings on the latest research on different areas that I've uncovered. And it's just been really rewarding. I've learned so much from colleagues such as yourself, Dr. Jill, and that collaboration has been critical for me to be able to help people. And most importantly, when you meet people, often at the events like events that we're at, when you find people that have had life-changing results and turned around all kinds of life-threatening conditions, there's many times when you'll be at these events and people will be there and they'll tell me that it was because of a film that they'd watched from me, some of the research that I uncovered that had worked for them. So most importantly, my point here is it works. And that's the most important part. What I'm about to share, it works. And that's what's so important.
I love that so much of where you came from and your passion for you really transforming humanity because we don't need to be a doctor. You can be a filmmaker, you can be a writer, you could like so many people. And those of you listening out there, there's so many ways that we can impact the health of our world. I really love that you are a journalist and a filmmaker, and it's so close to my heart because I'm kind of an accidental filmmaker. I remember I told you a little bit of this story in some
Yeah,
of
you're a
because of
superstar.
well, no, but I remember like 2021, we're all locked down in a pandemic, and I'm thinking about the book that's coming out, and I'm like, wait, does anyone read anymore? Everybody's on screens, and I like kind of to your point, I realized, oh. If we want to make an impact in this world, whether it's our podcast or a film that you're making, a huge way to do that is to get on screens or on Netflix or on wherever we can have that media presentation. And to me, some of the most profound moments in my life and my transformation for my own journey through cancer was when you see a film that cuts you to the heart and that you cannot stop thinking about, right? You've all had that if you're listening, where there's a film in your life where that I remember that day I saw that film and I've never been the same. And it's the kind of people that are coming up to you at the conferences saying, Jonathan, that film, The Truth About Cancer or Autoimmune Secrets or any one of those, like all of a sudden I got it. And the cool thing is you're actually using film to transform the lives of doctors, right? Which is so cool because the sad thing is some of us have egos and some hopefully don't, but this idea that like you can be an educator to the physicians is so phenomenal. So I
Wow.
love that you've chosen film as a vehicle to really do this greater work of humanitarianism. Amazing.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Joe.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So today, though, we're talking about, and it actually was on set for your film about red light, which is coming out soon. But we're going to talk about red light. Let's frame this first. I think many people have heard of it. I've talked about it a lot. I use it. But what is red light? What are the frequencies? Why is this actually a therapeutic benefit to our bodies?
Yeah, so fascinatingly, 1903 marked the date when the first major award was won for light therapies. It was a Nobel Prize by Niels Finsen for light therapies. And in this case, he used light therapy to effectively reverse lupus vulgaris. And so this marked a chapter in history where people were rediscovering things that our ancestors knew, but then quantifying it in a way that made it even more therapeutic. And then you fast forward to the 60s with Dr. Andre Mester in 1967, really being the pioneer of red light therapy, which was really still part of the spectrum of light. But what that whole science was about and how they were using it then and how we're using it now has all been about using frequencies, which light is actually really, in this case, electromagnetic waves that's stimulating the body and interfacing with important receptors like and important organelles within cells like mitochondria that are the energy powerhouses that are most sensitive to light, and they need that more than anything else. They're more responsive to it than any other thing you would put in your body. And it's fascinating when you think about the fact that when we're trying to help somebody, we're trying to give them something that will maybe make up for a deficiency or combat a toxicity. But when you're swallowing something, whether it's a drug or a supplement, you're hoping the digestive system will be able to deal with that and that it's going to work the way you want. Light bypasses all of that.
Yeah.
So it's shooting straight through the cells and it's doing many different mechanisms that are related to what's causing disease and what the cells need to effectively function. And if the cells are viable, if they're working, then all functions improve, whether that's thyroid health, knowing that there's millions of mitochondria in thyroid cells, thousands per thyroid cell, and then people are trying to work out what to do. And those mitochondria are essential for the conversion of thyroid hormones. And so if you're lacking light therapies, that's one of the major things that's needed for regenerative medicine, because what light therapies are doing, they're actually stimulating the mitochondria. By doing this, there's something called the mitochondrial stem cell connection. And with accelerating what by feeding the mitochondria so that they can produce adenosine triphosphate, ATP, which is what the body uses to fuel cell activity. Then by doing this, you're able to tap into how your body produces the energy that it needs to perform all functions. And so this is a huge missing link that people need to tap into. And then and coming back to the stem cell aspect, stem cells are then proliferating. And so you're able to proliferate more stem cells in the body. People know how important they are, how expensive they are, but your body's producing them. So the easiest way to access them is to feed those stem cells with what they need. And so the certain frequencies of red light, 660, 850, 810. A lot of the key frequencies within the optical window was anywhere between 600 to 1100, which is both red and near infrared, are proven to activate stem cell regeneration and proliferation, so the multiplication and the maturation of those cells, so that they get what they need to thrive. And then so that's that in a nutshell. And I think, and this is called photobiomodulation, photo light, bio life modulation, to change something. So to change something with the process of light. Then there's photodynamic therapy, which is then when you use a sensitizing agent to help, which
Mhm.
could be berberine, curcumin, methylene blue. Yeah.
Mhm. Yes, I've used them all.
Yeah,
Love
it's
it.
great.
And I love framing this because, like I said, many people they might think, I think it's real common for women to know, oh, it might increase collagen. So they might sit in a near and far infrared sauna and get some of that red light and think, oh, my skin's going to be better. But it's way deeper than that, isn't it? Like you're talking
Yeah.
thyroid health. I want to talk about some of the research around the organs like thyroid, organs like our brain,
Hmm.
and all of these things. Give us some of the snapshots of the research that's actually out there on how red light can affect us with these conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. So the red blood cells don't contain mitochondria, but these organ cells do, including the brain. And the brain can have as many as tens of thousands per cell. So these, when you think about this, these then become the areas that we need to stimulate the most. And I think when God made us, that's part of the reason why he made us with eyes that are also like solar panels. So we're receiving light through the eyes, and that light is needed for brain activity and the mitochondria and the brain. And then liver cells actually have an abnormally large number of mitochondria, up to as many as 3 or even 5,000 mitochondria. But then the problem as well is that you've got damaged mitochondria that need to go through autophagy, and light therapies do that as well, which is really important. So, uh, and and that's maybe one of the things that red light therapy has been studied the most for, to activate apoptosis. And I'll get to that. But once you start to understand that aspect, you understand that the reason why our organs are struggling is to do with senescent cells
Mhm.
that need to be cleared out, and they lack what they need to undergo that process. And even a, like, let's say, cancer stem cell, it lacks the information it needs to become either a normal healthy cell, or, because people don't think about that, it's called redifferentiation or
Mhm.
differentiation therapy, or it's just a process of a cancer stem cell then becoming a normal healthy cell. But the even if it was to die, it can actually mature, and then the one of the mature attributes is to have the ability to undergo apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. So those are triggered through light therapies. And so whether it's thyroid, liver, or brain, the processes in the body that are helping to clear out the disease cells and also then provide these key aspects of what the cells need, like cytochrome C oxidase and nitric oxide, these are critical aspects when it comes to understanding the way that the body is using light therapies in a process that relates to oxygen.
Mhm.
So cells breathing is actually a thing, and
Mhm.
so light therapies are stimulating and causing this respiration of cells is happening through the light therapies. And then what's happening as a result is that disease cells are dying, and that's the point I was making there with these senescent cells. They're getting cleared out as a result of the therapy, which is actually through reactive oxygen species. So
Mhm.
electromagnetic waves, light therapies will come through electromagnetic waves, stimulating the body to produce reactive oxygen species, including singlet oxygen, which are highly reactive. And what they will do is then cause apoptosis. So you're going to clear out the damaged cells, and you're going to help the healthy cells thrive. And that's why all these different organ functions are going to improve. And let's say thyroid studies are showing specifically that the groups that are taking the light therapies opposed to those that don't. Even there's specific studies where they'll take supplements. There'll be a group that takes supplements and no red light light therapy, and then the group that takes red light therapy and supplements, the group with the light therapies far outperform those just taking supplements, and specifically by markers by which a dramatic reduction in short periods of time of levothyroxine, as an example, and then showing clear signs that it's regenerative of the thyroid, helping to produce thyroid hormones naturally, particularly in cases of Hashimoto's and hypothyroid. And that's an example. And then when it comes to brain, there's amazing studies on glioblastomas and red light therapy.
Wow.
Specifically, the studies are showing that And this is the reason why the pharmaceutical complex has touted that photoimmunotherapy will become the fifth leading treatment to cancer, the next after surgery. And it's
Wow.
because of studies like the glioblastoma studies and prostate cancer studies, where it shows breast cancer studies that look, they're almost unbelievable, to tell you that much. But in the glioblastoma cases, the 12 to 15-month survival rate is to do with the recurrence of the tumor after surgery. But red light therapy is proving that it is helping to stop the recurrence. And so that combination of therapies, or others will maybe opt to do other alternative therapies in conjunction with red light to get around that.
Absolutely amazing, and particular of interest as a cancer survivor. And
Wow.
I mean, one thing before we got on, we talked briefly about, and I want to frame this for our listeners. I believe, and we've done amazing things with drugs. We've saved lives with antibiotics, and then we've started, nutrition, supplementation, functional medicine principles. The next frontier is energetics. I am certain of this. I'm sure you are as well, but it's the energy, and light is one form of that. That is really going to, I think, transform medicine. And as we realize, these things are invisible. So I think we've always maybe thought, oh, they can't be as effective, or we just don't have the data. But the truth is, as studies come out, this may be some of the most powerful stuff. And of course, if you guys think about it, any sort of X-ray or gamma knife radiation or anything we've ever used, those are extreme forms of light therapy, but those are also on the spectrum, right? And we've used
Wow.
those forever, X-rays and these and even interventions, like I said, the gamma knife. But this is something that's very accessible, that's very safe. Is there any kind of safe? I mean, to me, red light, there's almost no harm or contraindications, but have you come across anything
Mm.
where someone might want to be cautious or more careful or limit therapy?
Yeah, it's so good, and it's so crazy that it's really hard to find anything. And so because I want to tell people
Uh-huh.
that first is to do no harm. I want to
Right.
tell people be careful about this and this and this. It is so rare. So and then people can do smaller dosages over smaller periods. But you have to think about it this way. You think logically. Red light is not reinventing the wheel. It's not reinventing God. It's replicating the sun. It's
Yes.
particularly,
Yes.
especially the red, the sunrise, sunset. So tell me who's allergic to a sunrise and a sunset.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it. I was going to say that earlier. It's like the sunshine is what we were made to, and now we're all indoors and we're all not getting that because we have all the sunscreens, and it's going back to what we were meant to do, which is live outside, get exposure to natural sunlight, especially first thing in the morning. I
Exactly.
share my experience because I think it'll be relevant, and I'd love to have you comment. A couple of things where I've used red light really profoundly is in my own. I've had hypothyroid since I had cancer, and my dose probably 50% decreased after I started using red light on my chest and my thyroid. So I have a personal experience with that. And then the other thing that was really powerful for me, and this was maybe 7, 8 years ago, I had really bad mold toxicity. That's part of my story. And of course, with that, I had brain fog and cognition, word finding. And I bought a red light device that goes on the head, and there's a piece that goes up the nose and does it right into the cranium, and a real powerful device that has quite a bit of research. That was the thing I always gravitated to when I had the brain fog. I put on that device, and it would always consistently 20 minutes. And I was like, oh, my brain is on. Like, it was better than, I didn't take any stimulants, but it was, to me, it was equivalent of taking some sort of stimulant or coffee. And it was
Wow.
so good that I knew way back then there is something here. And now, again, the research is, do you know of any of the research on dementia or cognition? Because I
Yeah.
feel like that's been a real area of red light therapy power.
It's amazing. It's amazing. So there's studies on whether it's Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, dementia. There are so many now, which is amazing. And there's many different mechanisms. One that is proven is that it may remove formaldehyde from the brain.
Wow.
And so then there's lots of different mechanisms because in order to work out, well, why does someone have dementia? Then you'd look at roots and intracellular parasites, of which spirochetes, even though that's a bacteria, the need to radiate these types of things with light, and the fact that red light therapy is an anti-parasitic
Mhm.
and heavily proven as such, especially when combined. So it's interesting that artemisinin, which was an anti-malaria, kind of a supplement really, but drug, is a proven photosensitizer. So the combinations of these things are
Wow.
amazing. It is really cool,
So
right?
that's interesting because methylene blue is a potent, and the original use of methylene blue was as an antiparasitic,
Wow.
antibacterial, anti-malarial, and there's a clear connection with that potentiating light therapy.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. Because it's heightening the absorption of light into cells, whether it's healthy cells or whether it's tumor cells. And then that's just increasing the ability of the cell to absorb that light and undergo apoptosis. And the studies on cancer and methylene blue and red light are again almost
Wow.
unbelievable. And then these dementia studies are fascinating. They're finding dramatic improvement. And I've seen it firsthand as well. I've seen friends and family members that have not been able to put their thoughts together and been lost in kind of in their like with this low executive function, poor memory recall, all these, and there's a tremendous turnaround. There's a study as well, like when we see everything change in the last few years, and I'll speak in this in a little cryptically, but it was a long COVID study. But it's fine. It's really a very mainstream, very
Yeah.
medical. It was 62 participants, and they underwent 4 sessions. And these were extreme cases. They all went into remission. 62 out of 62 went into remission after 4 sessions. They were
Wow.
64 to 84 minutes long, and the categories were executive function, memory recall, emotional deficits, dyspnea, oxygen levels above 97% without oxygen supplementation, and digestive. And they all went, 60 out of the 62 all went into remission after in one single week, and the other two recovered in the following week or two. And then that was an example of something, because dementia is really symptom based when you really put it all together. It's all these root causes, but yeah, and all related to the gut as well. And then you look at how microbiome are very sensitive to light, and then they're needed for the production of neurotransmitters. So you're feeding the mitochondria. Hence the emphasis on whole body, whole organ, versus, oh, like I've got a problem with my brain, I just want to go
Yeah.
here, but that's connected to the heart again, and the lungs and the kidneys and the liver and the intestines and the gut and the microbiome. So targeting all of this together is amazing. And one that I wanted to just quickly bring up as well, and I'd love to see what you think of this one. It was a prostate cancer study. I know you didn't ask this, but but before, when you were asking and referencing cancer, this was a good one because it was a big one. 413 participants.
Hmm.
And so, what was the outcome? And there was a placebo group, a control group, so that you could see the two groups side by side. It was a 2 year study, 10 control centers in Europe. And so they're regularly checking these people, most of which I would assume all did regular conventional therapies. 49% go into remission in the 2 year period in the red light therapy group, who also used a photosensitizer. In this case, it was unusual. You've probably not heard of it. It was a deep sea bacteria. And the other group was 13.5%. Those that did not take the light therapy, they were 13.5%, which meant that you had a 4 times greater likelihood of beating prostate cancer in this study if you incorporated the red light therapy with a photodynamic agent.
Unbelievable. And I'm not surprised. As you were talking about, long COVID kinds of studies and things, interestingly, my thought is, and I want to know if you came across this, we know COVID affects dramatically the endothelium, which is the lining of all the vessels in our body, and that is where we produce the most of our nitric oxide. Nitric oxide opens blood vessels and allows blood flow to our periphery, to our organs. And I think part of what we're seeing post-pandemic for people who are suffering is endothelial dysfunction and low nitric oxide. And I'm wondering, have you come across studies of red light? Because I'm assuming it increases nitric oxide production as well.
I don't think there's anything better, and there's
Yeah,
so many studies on the nitric oxide production and
yeah,
how that goes together with cytochrome C oxidase, and that these are critical for self-signaling, and hence why it's so effective with heart-related conditions, because we know how important nitric oxide is for heart health. There's a study out of Tel Aviv that showed, and this was the Friends of Tel Aviv with the university there, American Friends of Tel Aviv. So again, I reference the keywords. Look up all these keywords. You'll find them by just putting these words in. It was an 80% reduction in heart muscle scarring, which is the hardest
wow.
part of
Yes.
the issue. You could have myocarditis, but once the scar tissue gets so bad, that's the irreversible part. But it was up to 80%, and it was a combination in this case of stem cells that were injected and with the red light therapy together over the heart. And but the way that somebody could arguably seek to replicate these results would be through intermittent fasting or complete fasting over a period of days to produce more stem cells while you're fasting, as an example, just to seek to, like, when you look at how do these therapies go together. But yes, nitric oxide critical.
Wow, love that because we're getting, and it's funny, you just mentioned heart. That's what I was thinking of, like, okay, this is going to be really good for heart disease. And that's not one if at the top of my list I would have thought, obviously, skin and brain and all cognition, thyroid, as you mentioned, but heart is so critical. And I can see how this would be huge. The scarring, that's mind blowing. That's really, really.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of patients right now. I'm like, I'm going to go back and talk to them about this. Now, are most of these studies, it's interesting because you've mentioned a couple that are outside the US, and I think sometimes our industrial, interest in things prevents us medical doctors from hearing the real data. Is there more studies outside the US than in the US, or is it pretty
Oh,
equal?
it's a good question. I wouldn't know side by side. Thankfully, there are a lot of US ones. They're just the particular ones that I referenced at
Yeah,
this point were European, but and then
yeah,
Israeli. But that was still an association with the United States. It was an American Friends of Tel Aviv, and so yeah, there's a lot of great US studies, and but even Europe, which you would say would probably fall under the same banner
yeah,
of United States and Australia of being kind of under that.
yeah.
Oh, anyway, let's not go down that route. But oppression. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll just say oppression. But the Birmingham University study was amazing as an example. It was a rat study. All the ones I've mentioned are human studies, but this one was showing it was a spinal cord injury study,
Mm.
and it was only 1 minute of exposure because some people are
Wow.
thinking I don't have
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And I mentioned one that was 64 to 84-minute long sessions. Now I'm talking 1 minute. They showed that it increased cell viability by 45%.
Wow.
So the effectiveness, the functioning of cells was increased by 45%. And again, it was a rat study, but it was a minute of exposure, and it was a spinal cord injury study, and it showed that it was regenerative of the spine and was also neuroprotective in the rat. So there are lots of great studies. One of the studies that is one of my favorites as well is a breast cancer study. It was an in vitro study, but it was human cell lines in both triple negative and non-triple negative breast cancer. And they radiated, and this is now we're going to get geeky on wavelengths.
Yeah.
They radiated with 615, 630, 660, and 730, four different wavelengths, all visible red light. Once you get into the 800s, that's invisible. It's called near infrared, up to about 1100. They radiated just with these because, again, you're thinking about penetration. It's a little shallower, so you want to shoot into the target, think like an archer. This is very much that case. There was only one of those four wavelengths that was able to do what it did. And what it did was that it dropped breast tumor proliferation by 40% in 24 hours in both triple negative and non-triple negative cell lines. This is a PubMed study, so just put in these keywords into PubMed, and it was 660. It was that was the nanometers. So people knowing the wavelengths for which conditions then becomes a critical aspect.
That makes so much sense because, again, whether it's any of these electromagnetic frequencies, the wavelength really does matter. And I think what we're going to find is like this wavelength is perfect for this condition and this is perfect for. So that's 660. That's what's my next question. There's so many devices out there. I've literally got a small red light there. I've got a panel behind me. I've got one for my face, like literally in this room right here. Here's another one using my face. I've got them all over the place.
Good,
What is
good.
the best? How do people know what they're getting and if it's effective? Because I think now, go to Amazon, get this, and not all are created equal.
Yeah, exactly. And there are some cases where people's lives are on the line as well. And so they're betting on this with their life, but then you don't know, like, because you're looking at it with your eyes, you don't know how do you measure that. So the number one first thing for anyone to look for is to look for irradiance, which is the amount of power delivered, which is typically measured in milliwatts per centimeter squared. The cool thing is that you literally can go on like Amazon and you could put up irradiance meter and you could buy a $60 device that would Bluetooth with your phone and put it in front of your device to see whether it actually tests as
Yeah.
it has said, or watch videos, or or go with companies that that's what they do on every single device to make sure the power is what it needs to be, because this comes down to why LEDs are also so powerful, because you've got LEDs and then you got lasers and you got incandescent bulbs and halogen, and then you'd say, well, which one and why? And the irradiance out of a halogen and an incandescent bulb is far too low for the types of things that I'm talking about. All the studies I mentioned were all on LEDs, light emitting diodes, but cannot be confused with high flicker rate lights in homes that are poor quality, that hurt your eyes and damage your eyes. Whereas Dr. Andrew Huberman has cited a study where they're looking into the red light for 3 minutes, and it's increased their eyesight by 17%
Yeah.
after one session. You know it, yeah. So look at those types of things to denote, again, coming back to irradiance, the amount of power. So in this case, my recommendation is to look for something that is around 200 or over 200 milliwatts per centimeter squared at 3 inches, because now you're able to replicate what's in studies of very high power. But sadly, even a lot of the devices in clinics are under 100. Because they don't know, and those companies don't necessarily have a drive to keep up and push with the technology. The other thing is wavelengths. So then, which wavelengths for which conditions? And then you'd say, well, I kind of want to prevent everything, or I've got this type of issue, but I don't want anything else. And so my general recommendation there is to get multiple wavelengths that are proven for different conditions. And so my favorite wavelengths are all the way down to 480, which is blue, but just a small amount. You'll find that that's in your
Yeah.
skin devices, right?
Yep,
Skin
exactly.
bacteria, skin rejuvenation,
I have that
circadian
right here
rhythm.
too. Yeah.
Yes, circadian rhythm is best regulated by the blue, and then also neonatal care, babies in the womb. Funny enough, 480 has been heavily proven there, but then 590 gets into some of the skin as well with the orange red, and then you've got 630, 660, 670, 810, 830, 850. They're all the near infrared, and 1060. But these are all proven. Like anything that goes deeper, like through the skull, through the lung, into the lungs, through the rib cage, into the bone, that all is in the near infrared, which is 800 and up. And so those are all critical wavelengths that I would look for, and then low EMFs. But typically, I would say that most devices don't have high EMFs, but again, it can be tested with a meter, and that should be like around zero. So that's
Hmm.
the kind of thing. Yeah.
I love that you're mentioning that because there's so many devices out on all of these levels energetically, and some of them are emitting so many EMFs that they're just really toxic. And I have a whole patient population that's incredibly sensitive to that, so that's really
Yeah.
important. So this has been so amazing and so much new stuff. And again, what's great is it's really coming out exponentially, the research. So I think even in a few months, there's going to be more and more and more. Um, I think you're working on also another project related to biophotomodulation, which is the technical name for what we've been talking about today. Do you want to tell us about your new project, where people can find you, and maybe some of the other things you're up to?
Absolutely. So after learning everything you've learned here, then it's one of those things where it's really worth taking like having a try and like because it's all theory until it works for you. And I didn't tell you this case study, and it was this woman that she was supposed to she had really bad Graves, a hyperthyroid, and Shannon, and she decided, look, I'm just going to do this. And again, there's not as much study. There's a lot of studies on hypothyroidism, but not as many on the hyper. But she then just got in front of it. It's actually one of our panels, and I'll tell people about that in a moment. But then her blood work was so bad, she became practically bedridden. She could hardly walk, but she wanted to compete in the marathon. So everything had kind of hit rock bottom. And again, this is anecdotal. So we've talked about studies, but in this case, in 2.5 weeks, her blood work had normalized. She went back to compete in the marathon. Her doctors had their jaws dropped. There can be miracles. And if you think about the mitochondria in the cells, if you just increase the function, it's possible. So don't shoot past that. But the projects that I've been working on, Jill, has been about creating the best products and then taking all the research and then saying, okay, with manufacturers that have worked in this field for the last decade or more, and then say, okay, let's put all these wavelengths. And the wavelengths I mentioned are all the wavelengths we put in our devices, which is all the way from 480, 590, the 600s, the 800s, 9 different wavelengths up to 1060, and which is the deeper penetration. And then we went to like work out, well, what's the best chips that will achieve that? In this case, it's a 42 mil chip versus a 21. So kind of all the nerdy stuff to make it so powerful and effective, but incredibly safe, like an FDA class two certified. But we then, developed something that was a game changer with 9 wavelengths and irradiance at 205 milliwatts per centimeter squared at 3 inches, and good for whole body and completely affordable. Like we could have like, it's one of the things where, because it's so important, you could put any price on it, but we just wanted to make it so that people could access it. And so it's incredibly affordable. And then what people can do is they'll find that it's cheaper than any other thing you'll do because it's a one and done. either you're doing it on a payment plan, and so it costs you what it costs for a supplement a month anyway, or you buy it outright. But if you look at what that costs you over the next year or two, it's really what it costs for a single supplement. But not a single supplement can do all the things we just talked about, or even a whole collection of them. And I have a supplement company. I can speak from experience on that. But yeah, that's what we did. And so if people want to learn more about that and see what we've created and see additional training materials or all the research and all the clinical studies that I cite, like what, and go deeper, then you can go to myredlight.com. So myredlight.com. And as well, we wanted to give a saving to your audience, Jill. So we've given the code Dr. Jill, which is DRJILL, and you'll get an additional 10% off. And we've already got some great discounts there. And so it'll also give you an additional saving there. So we just want to take care of your audience. But my hope that people actually just my recommendation is that people just try it, because if you're covered by a 3-year warranty and a 60-day money back guarantee, if it works for you, it could change your life. And if it doesn't, then you tried something. But I've yet to see anyone that has not responded to this. It's working across the board, which is awesome.
I love this, Jonathan, and I actually so support what you're doing and love that you're finding the best of the best and bringing that to the public because people need this. And now you can access this really easily, whether you have it at home. I have my whole life been a guinea pig, whether it's through my cancer or my Crohn's or my mold-related illness. And like I said, if I would tell you all the devices I have right here in this room, it's because I'm like, I want to try this. So I'd encourage you, I'm going to try it. So we're going to talk
That's
after the
awesome.
call about that.
Oh, we will.
But anyway, I want to just encourage if you're listening and want to try something fairly simple. I will say the most profound impact that I've had on my health has been energetic devices, and that's
Wow.
red light or PEMF over any sort of supplement or program. I will also say physical activity. That's right up there. That might be number one. And then, but I think this is great, and I
That's awesome.
love the information you brought. So say the
Thanks,
website
Jill.
and we'll have it in the show
Yeah,
notes.
yeah, absolutely. It's my red light. So it's super easy, myredlight.com.
Okay.
And the code is DRJILL, Dr. Jill. And yeah, it's
Thanks
one
for
of those
doing
things,
that.
Jill. Oh, of course. No, your audience is awesome. So we want to take care of them. Yeah, sometimes people can't do exercise. And it's like,
Yeah.
and so this can be a road in, like the case
Like the
study I
patient you
mentioned.
told, yeah, I love that because I have a lot of
It,
people too that, yeah, with muscular, with whatever they're in bed and they can't move, and it is nice to have something powerful where you can get them so that they can get up and stand up and start to move. And speaking of the pandemic and all the sequelae from that, a lot of people are having dysautonomias and regulation of blood pressure issues and all of that. And again, these are the kind of things that can change that as well. So thank
Yeah,
you
and
for the
oh,
web.
you're welcome,
Yeah.
Jill. And just on that note, I thought of one. It was the British Medical Journal, and they had this case study that they published from this. It was like a hope, it was a laser institute.
Mhm.
They had this kid. She had a stroke when she was born, and
Wow.
she's 9 years old at this time. And so the hope that you could recover this child and get her to normal social ability. Her test score is extremely low. Social ability is very poor. And then she's 3 months in, and now the video is on her. You watch her share her case study that was published as well. And she was saying, I'm normal now. People like me for who I am. I was bullied, and it's just like I'm a parent. I'm
Wow.
just
Yeah.
like crying, and her test scores are normal, or just it's just amazing. Like, how can somebody recover? And then you look at all the studies on stroke recovery with light therapies, and you realize, man, people need this to prevent. They need this if they're in a bad situation. They need this for their parents and themselves. And anyway, so it's really exciting, Joe. And why I remember as well, one of the points I didn't mention was dual LED. So two different wavelengths coming out of the same LED, something that we did in our devices. So sometimes you just kind of look for what's going to keep you like fully up to date, and then you kind of end up with something that's going to last you a lifetime. And they do last a lifetime. Their rated lifespans is basically a whole human's lifetime, or actually more. But yeah, so it's pretty cool.
Wow. Well, thank you for making this work today. I'm super excited to share with our audience and just keep doing the great humanitarian work that you're doing in the world, Jonathan. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you so much, Joe. I appreciate you.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining me for another great episode of Resiliency Radio. Wasn't Jonathan great? I just love his heart for humanity, and he keeps bringing great documentaries, great research to the world. And now the red light, which I've always been a fan of. I'm super excited to check out his device. As he mentioned, if you want to know more, you can go to myredlight.com and use the code Dr. Jill to get 10% off if you're interested. Hey, and if you guys don't know, I've mentioned this several times in the last few weeks, but we're going on a retreat with me, Dr. Jill, to Mexico, SHA Wellness Mexico. You can find all the details and information. I have two groups. They're very limited. So if you're interested, be sure and sign up for more information as soon as possible before we fill up. The website is jillcarnahan.com/wellness-retreats. You can get all the information there. We're going to SHA Wellness Mexico, an amazing integrative medical center. You'll be with me for workshops and dinner and hanging out, and it's a small group, so you'll get lots of personal time. I hope that if you're interested, you'll check that out. We're doing two 5-day retreats, one beginning April 26th and the second one beginning April 30th. So you can join either one of those. You can extend your stay if you want. And all the information is at jillcarnahan.com/wellness-retreats. Thanks so much, guys, and we will see you next week for another episode of Resiliency Radio.